Howdy, folks. Happy Friday. Thank God it's Friday. Thank God it's over 20 degrees in Buffalo, but I'm not sure how long that'll last. Russ, start us off with the pre-show.
Well, Mike, I'm disappointed in you. I am. Because today, I know it's not something that doesn't happen every day, but it happens most days. And today is the anniversary of the Boston Massacre, and that's not the home run by Bucky fucking Dent.
Jeez.
That's what they call them.
I know. We're a PG show here, Russ.
Oh, I see. But Mike, I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. Anthony, I'm sure you have something to chime in about it.
No, I have nothing. I have nothing to say on that. This is the Russ Cohen show on this one.
Listen, I have two history buffs on here. And you guys have nothing to say.
Usually, I include that when we do the introductions.
Well,
now you've screwed up my surprise. But screw you.
Then there's no inch. That's it.
Man, it is Friday, and you guys are cantankerous as heck today. Look at you two.
Jeez, what the hell? I have nothing to say here. What the?
Okay, then don't say it. That's it for the pre-show.
That's it? No pre-show? That was it?
You guys aren't talking about it. That's it.
Okay.
You're the history majors.
Hello, Hockey World. Today is Friday, March 5th, 2021.
I'm Anthony Mingione from Off the Post Radio.
Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
Kevin Allen.
And I'm Michael Agello, and the Boston Massacre. And this is the HockeyBuzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com, where you can learn your finest bits of history if you don't listen to Russ Cohen. Okay, let's start off with this. After watching a rather unexciting 3-1 loss to the Vancouver Canucks last night, I'm ready to get some well-deserved shut-eye, and I do a final look at Twitter, and lo and behold, I see the Calgary Flames announce Jeff Ward is gone, and Daryl Sutter has been hired as the new head coach of the Calgary Flames. Woohoo. Kevin, I can't believe it. I really can't believe that he's back.
Yeah, no, it's just, especially with there's sort of been a movement, to bring in the younger coaches. I don't want to say young, but younger coaches, and there's a style now that I think people are embracing, the Cooper model, where they're just their approach is not 1950ish, and Daryl Sutter is as old school as it gets. And, although it is interesting, Tom Laidlaw, who is my podcast partner on a different podcast, who, played in the NHL, he had been lobbying for Gerard Gallant because he felt Calgary needed an old school coach. And he really felt like that was the way to go. And they went in that direction. They just didn't go with Gerard Gallant.
Right.
Sutter, he'll bring accountability, as we all know, to that team. And somebody like there's some players on that team that have not lived up to expectations, and I would assume their minutes are going to dwindle over the next few weeks. And it doesn't help that the Oilers have played well this season. Right. Not counting the 2 losses to Toronto, but in Alberta, it's a really big thing. And the other element, of course, is that Sutter is from Alberta, and to be able to bring him back, he's kind of like a favorite son.
Oh, he's an he brought in a Stanley Cup, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's and the other thing is just he is by far in my top 3 press conference coaches of all time. Just
sure, I agree with that.
He's hilarious, and he's not that he gives you great stuff. It's just that his personality, like, am I okay?
Yeah, no, you were shuddering there for.
You're breaking a little.
Okay,
yeah, you're good.
Sorry, it's just I might maybe log back in.
Yeah,
but
I'll sort of tell a story that will kind of sum up Daryl's relationship with the media, and that is this. I was talking with Dean Lombardi, and we were talking. I can't even remember what the subject was, and he said, He gave me a bunch of quotes for a story I was doing, and then he said when he was done, he goes, who's really good on this is Daryl. You should call Daryl. Daryl will give you really stuff. And I said, Dean, you've forgotten one thing. And he paused for a moment. He goes, oh, you're not Canadian. And I said, yeah. As we all know, Daryl has great relationships with the Canadian media. He does. A Canadian member of the Canadian media asks a good question, Daryl will answer it. But
here's the bigger question, though, Kev. The big question that comes from me is, and we see this in the NFL especially, it seems like if you've won a Super Bowl in the NFL, you will get, 4 subsequent jobs. And it seems like it's the same thing in the NHL now. And it does make you wonder, who is the one that's going to lose out on this? Is Calgary going to be the one that loses out on it because it's finally time that Sutter didn't come back to coaching, or is this going to work out great,
Well, I think there is. You can make a case that they need an old school coach because they just don't seem to like there's more there than we've seen, and I think they need someone to kind of call them out, and Daryl will do that, as you know. So it is going to be interesting to see. He'll have that team playing better defensively. I guarantee you that.
Well, Anthony, this is his 5th go around. San Jose, Chicago, LA, where he won 2 cups, and Calgary to a cup final in 2004. I think the big concern here is obviously, has the game passed him by?
And that's going to be a big question. I would look at also the types of teams that Daryl's been successful with. I mean, the most recent, the LA Kings, big, strong roster throughout the lineup, and Calgary, not on the bigger side in terms. I mean, there's some players in that lineup that have decent size, but playing that way stylistically, either there's going to have to be one of two things that are going to happen over time here. And again, this is a 3-year deal that he's obviously he's looking to be on for the long term. Are we looking at some changes, obviously, with the Calgary Flames going in as they come towards the end of this campaign and move into a new campaign? Are they going to go out and acquire players that play more of his style, or is it going to be a case of, he's going to be able to adapt some of his tactics to a lineup that's not as big as the one he may have been used to in Los Angeles? Well,
Russ, Elliot Friedman's when he heard about this, he did the 31 Thoughts podcast, and he was talking about that certain players like Gaudreau might not be a fit with Sutter's style.
Well, I would say definitely not a fit.
Right, but other players like Matthew Tkachuk and maybe Sam Bennett, and I'm fixated on the whole Bennett thing. I get the feeling that Treliving wasn't getting any value for Sam Bennett in trades. That he liked Sam Bennett because it was his first draft pick. He took him 4th overall. That this is a move tailored to getting the most out of a guy like Sam Bennett because he doesn't want to give up Sam Bennett because he thinks there's something there.
Well, I don't think you get a new coach just to, bring the best out of one player. So,
no.
But I do think they're trying to do it out of others. If he could get the best out of Bennett and Monahan and lose Gaudreau, then you might call that a success, because if they eventually lose Monahan and Gaudreau, they're in bad shape. Doesn't matter what they get back in return. You're never going to get back the same value, and then you're going to be taking a step back. They can't afford to take a step back with Sutter. That's the problem here, is they don't have a great farm system. They don't. So they don't have tons of assets to trade other than tradable assets on the roster to trade for other assets. So again, they might try and go get his types of players, but they don't have a lot of futures to offer that are great, talented players. So this is a tough spot. This is almost like they can maybe make one change at the deadline, the Gaudreau trade. How many teams are going to be able to make multiple trades at the deadline with the amount of time that players are going to sit and everything else, and probably the amount of time that GMs are going to waste just deciding if they're in or out of it.
And adding in the quarantine situation as well. They're going to be trading from, player from in the States, or even, how's the rule work? Does it work even within province, or just?
That's
it's just
fine.
If it's a stateside player, then they have to quarantine.
And Kevin, it's funny because Jim Benning had a press conference in Vancouver this morning, and basically insinuated that the changes with the team have to come within from within because of the 14-day quarantine situation, that it's going to be a hindrance in terms of making deals. Elliot Friedman, again, reported something about the Leafs, who are rumored to be going after a top 6 or a top 9 forward, and pointed to a gap in their schedule, 14 days, where they only play 5 games. The Canadian general managers, this has got to be something that has got to be having them pull their hair out. And I'm wondering whether they're petitioning the Canadian government to see, does it have to be 14 days? Can it be 7 days with test? I mean, what have you heard from your league sources about that?
Well, I know that the Canadian GMs are miffed about it, and they point to America where, even the CDC has said that it's really, sort of 10 days. And those of us who have paid attention will all tell you that for the most part, most of the things show up in 5 days. So, for all those reasons, I think, they'd like to see it change. But, I think you're still going to see some movement anyway, but I think it's going to happen. Like I've been hearing that this week could be a time when teams make trades, because they need to start that clock ticking as soon as possible.
Yeah, I could see that. Mike, getting back, I don't know, are we done with Calgary for a minute?
Yeah.
Okay, there's something to mention for Vancouver, and that is, I know you wanted to bury the league because the Leafs lost, but Demko played a hell of a game. Like, this wasn't just like the Leafs just took a few shots and it was an easy game for him. Like, he was stacking the pads. He showed me more quickness post to post in that game than I think I've ever seen from him. Like, he was really locked in.
I think the Leafs ran out of gas around the halfway point of the game when it was 2-1. But no, in the first half of the game, he made like 23 or 24 saves. He was fantastic. Yeah. So yeah, hey, Edmonton fans, that's what happens when your team has a goalie. And
the other thing though that might give Vancouver fans pause, and I saw this little line that went up, and I thought of fans, and that was basically. Jim Benning says he's going to negotiate a contract April 12th. And
starting April 12th.
Starting April 12th. So I think he feels pretty comfortable. He's going to be there a while, maybe even until next year.
Well, Kevin, he said in that media availability that until he's told by ownership that he's not in control, then he's in control. And his point of view is, I'm going to negotiate with Hughes and with Pettersson after the trade deadline, which I interpret that meaning that maybe he's going to trade some salary off, and that'll open up more of his cap space, but who knows? And
he's got to be feeling safe, or he wouldn't say that, because otherwise ownership would say, don't talk about their contracts because we're not going to go there.
Well, you'd also don't want there to be, if there's going to be something that's going to happen, they don't want there to be smoke. You know that.
Speaking of Benning, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but I just hate when general managers just dismiss the possibility of them being able to do anything because of the rules. Like, can you imagine Jim Russell saying, well, we just can't do anything because
he would never do that.
Yeah, and I just hate that. And you hear it too often. It's too hard to make trades. We're restricted by the salary cap. It's up to the players. Well, there are general managers around the league that figure out ways to do things and, see it as a challenge to be able to do those kind of things. So I don't think it's all on the players. I know his point is well taken because this team played better last season and some of the players do have to play better. But it's not all on them. He could do some things. That defense, everybody knew that their defense wasn't good enough starting the season, and he could address that.
Two things that I've learned about that Vancouver team. One was a comment that I learned that losing Tanev was a big loss in the locker room. So that definitely affected them. Like that's not confirmed.
And with Quinn Hughes, because that was his defense partner.
Yeah, so that definitely was a factor. The other thing, though, last night, Mike, they were playing good defense. They were. Yeah. They had their active sticks going. Like, if they could play like that, you can't expect Demko to play like that every game. But if they could play like that, they're going to be better down this, next half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, I heard I saw a Vancouver reporter say that was their best
Yeah.
defensive effort of the year. So I mean,
Yeah, so.
now that says something. But I've watched enough games of theirs over the first 6 weeks that they defensively they've been pretty bad.
Oh yeah.
So
No, they have been. I'm sorry about that. I don't know what.
Yeah, you say that you can't expect Demko to play like that, but Markstrom did last season.
No, I know. I mean,
every-
every game. Like, he's going to have an occasional game, and if he does,
I mean, I think one of the reasons the Canucks last year was the consistency of their goaltending.
Yes.
Like he was good, 90% of the time. And
I mean, look, Demko's on a run now. I don't see why he can't do it. But I'm just saying, if he has an off game and his defense can pick him up, that's a new thing for them this year. That's basically what I'm saying.
That is a new thing, but I'm always reminded of early in my career when Harry Sinden told me he hated it when his coach would say, well, you can't blame the goalie. And he would always say, I always blame the goalie. He said, I don't pay the goalie a lot of money to make easy saves. I pay them to save us when we're not playing well.
Well, Russ,
and, I've always.
Well, Ack, it's 3:20, and you haven't blamed Michael Hutchinson yet for the loss.
Oh, I know. I was going to let you know. No, I mean, I was actually Michael Hutchinson. I mean, I'm just saying. We're going to have our debate forever about this kind of thing, but I definitely believe that the Leafs, before they go looking for another forward, 9th or 10th or 11th or 12th forward, could use a better goalie.
Let Kevin be the great arbiter here, okay? My feeling here is with the Leafs right now, with Frederik Andersen as their starter, with Jack Campbell as their backup, and Michael Hutchinson as their third goaltender. If they're at the point where they lose Andersen and they lose Campbell, they're done. They're not winning in the playoffs. So I'm sorry, going out and expending assets for a third goaltender in case the other two drop. There are other things they need to address, Zach.
Yeah.
I don't buy into this argument of we've had this every year, so
yes.
But I just don't buy into the argument that if you're a top team, that you can sit there and say I mean, if one of your goalies goes down, that you're done, because you can sit there and say, okay, one of our goalies goes down.
I'm talking two.
I know, but you still need two goalies to play in the playoffs. If you're the top team in the NHL and you don't have a third goalie you can really trust right now. This is your chance. This is the Leafs Stanley Cup. They got a chance to do this.
Maybe
say that they're done. It is ridiculous to me. Like,
I'm going to be the
Go ahead, Kevin.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, no, I was just going to say, I off the top of my head, and maybe you've already researched this, but I can't think of in the years that I've covered the league or before where a third goalie had to step in and be the carry the team.
The last time,
other than Lester Patrick,
was well, no, I'm talking
the Oilers.
Was 06, with UC Markkinen, and they lost.
Right.
We're talking about just in a postseason run, because I could tell you Flyers 2010.
Right.
That was a complete merry-go-round with that goaltending situation.
It's just I mean, usually I'm fighting about backup goalies. Okay, usually I'm fighting about the backup goalie and not the starting.
I think what's lost in this is Hutchinson played a decent game yesterday. He only gave up one.
That shouldn't be lost in this, because he did play a good game, and he's played well in the last several games. Okay, so I'm not going to take him out of this. I'm just saying that the Leafs, all the energy. I mean, this also goes into my feeling, like, moving forward, that they actually do need another goalie besides Andersen. That's not their goalie for the future. So I'm also thinking in terms of that. If you could do that now, solidify that position, and let's not like the team that hasn't won the Stanley Cup. Let me finish. The team that hasn't won the Stanley Cup since 1967 is the best team in the NHL right now. Let's not minimize that.
I'll just state this, and we can move on. They committed to Frederik Andersen at the beginning of the year. If they were going to move on and have another goaltender, they would have done it. At that point, they've committed to him. So
because they committed to him, they're willing to just throw everything away.
No, they think they can win.
Well, but there's no options anyway.
Right.
Who would they possibly get?
Darcy Kemper. Throwing it out there. Darcy Kemper. Go get Darcy Kemper.
Darcy Kemper's not available.
Okay, well, not available now. Okay.
Well, he's not available as far as I know.
Now, speaking of goaltending injuries,
Okay.
we're
I don't.
Yeah.
All right.
Speaking of goaltending injuries, Russ, we're watching last night, and I'm waiting for the announcement of doom from the New York Rangers, because seeing Shesterkin go down, I mean, I think it was a serious knee. Let's just say this: he was carried off the ice by two teammates. He couldn't put any weight on it. That's not a good sign.
No, I mean, wait until 5:30. We'll hear about some sort of knee surgery, I'm sure. And look, it was a non-contact. It just buckled when he was, in the butterfly. You could see he put all the weight on the one leg. It was awkward, and then that was it. It just went out. And yeah, it's tough. But I always feel bad. Like the NHL Network, they're trying to like do this from the studio. And Kevin Weeks, there's literally like Shesterkin can't put any weight, and he can't even walk. There's three guys carrying him, and Kevin Weeks is like, well, gee, we hope it's not a serious injury. And it's like, no, it's serious, Kevin. He can't even walk. There's two guys carrying him. His legs aren't really even functioning. It's serious, okay? We know it's pretty serious.
Now,
it's a groin pull, which for goalies is not good.
If it's a groin pull, then it's probably better than the kney surgery, honestly.
Well, when you guys were talking about Toronto, I thought you were going to go to the rumor that I saw. I first saw it on Facebook and then read about it on Twitter of the Forsberg to Toronto. I have a hard time with that.
Yeah.
First of all, getting Forsberg and giving up Nylander, that helps you.
It doesn't help him.
Right. It's the same.
It literally makes no sense. The only thing I can think of is they think they're getting an equivalent forward in Forsberg without the term, and that would allow them to sign guys like Riley and Hyman to long-term extensions. So they're clearing money down the road, but they're not going to mess with the core group right now.
They're playing well. Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I mean the talk, and I'm skeptical about this. The talk has been another Predator, Michael Granlund. Because his money is a little more reasonable, and they probably could get Nashville to retain 50%. But I don't know where Granlund really helps them. I'm not sure how good he really is playing. He would be playing on the left wing with Tavares and Nylander, but that's one name amongst a number of names. I heard Eric Stahl.
He's not a good playoff performer, so like I would get somebody that's more proven in the playoffs. That's a little greasier. I really wouldn't even look at him.
Stahl makes more sense. He can play center and wing. Yeah. Now,
I did hear rumors today about, if we're throwing out some rumors about the Predators having interest in Nolan Patrick. I don't know if that could play into it at all, into this Ekholm stuff.
I think it could. It depends on where Philadelphia is at with regards to how Patrick's playing at the moment. He's had a good couple games here, I would say, in Pittsburgh. He's been re-engaged. If that's something that Philadelphia is, and I think if Philadelphia is going to try to entice Nashville to trade Matthias Ekholm to them, that I think is a name. He would be a name that would be in conversation.
Well, here's the bigger thing, Anthony.
That's the only name. Like I did talk to them about, Frost, and I talked to them about, basically everybody else is there.
I think
Farabee and Frost, and they're much more inclined to think Patrick is what they would move, and what the Predators might. I mean, he's Nolan Patrick's second overall pick. That's something the Predators haven't had many of those kind of players. Mm-hmm. If he's healthy, don't you think, Kev? This is kind of an interesting.
No, I think they would be interested in him. The only thing that would worry them is, are they getting another Johansson?
And that's a legit question.
Yeah, you can't tell if his offense is back yet. His physicality is back, but you can't tell if his offense is.
Right.
The thing for Philly that would be an issue is, I think if they make that trade, Anthony, then Giroux is back to being a center.
Not necessarily. If you're looking listen, you have again. Connor Bunman's played particularly well at fourth line center. You're probably playing Scott Lawton at third line center.
I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to find that would be a failure if they did.
Maybe not. But in this circumstance, I think they would probably look at that circumstance. And Lawton has played, I think, fairly well at both positions. He's streaky to be given, but I think Lawton has played well at center, at third line center. He would be perfectly fine in that spot.
I like him better on the wing at these days, but okay.
Yeah.
But Drew, they sure.
Right, Kevin.
Okay, Kevin. I'm sorry.
Well, for sure, what I would say is that Nashville started out looking for a first-round pick and a good young player. But I think getting a player who's already in the league, who's young and has potential, I think would be appealing to Paul.
And he's
for
cheap.
sure.
Yeah.
He's not making much money.
Right.
And he's cheap, and he also the other thing about him is he's good. He's a good two-way player. I mean, he is really good. He's much better defensively than I thought he'd be. We didn't get to see him play, but he's good defensively. He has big upside offensive skills, obviously.
And he's retainable for 4 more years because he's
right at a cheap rate.
So I mean, and based on he missed most of last year with the injury. He's only got I think 5 points in 20 games right now. He's not going to be expensive, but he's under control. And if he turns it around, then you've got yourself an inexpensive player for 4 years, which we know that's important for Nashville. So
yeah. I mean, you could add something. Someone said durability insurance in the chat room. I think you could do something like that, where it's a first round pick if he plays, I don't know, 50 games, whatever. It becomes a second or third round pick with him, that kind of thing. But you can just based on his games played, if you're worried about his health. Because I think a first round pick would also go, and I think it would be Patrick and a first rounder is what I heard, which is a significant.
I've said when it comes to Matthias Ekholm that to me a first round pick is like the entry fee.
It is the entry.
Acquire him.
No, they've already said that. So
that's the entry fee. There's too much competition. There's too much competition for a 30-year-old for a relatively young veteran defenseman who has his skill. And again, for Philadelphia, they may be if you're trying to thread the needle and have a right-handed shot, that's to me the only thing about Ekholm that isn't appealing. That wouldn't be appealing in Philadelphia is the fact that he's a left shot. But that's it. Everything else you're replacing.
Which goes to who we talked about yesterday. Dave Savard is the other option, right? Dave Savard out there, who's a right defenseman, right shot, right?
Possible, but I don't think again for where Philadelphia is. I think defensively, Ekholm with the way he plays, his style of play, how he would fit with a Provorov or with a Sanheim if you're pairing those guys up, really just solidifies their top 4.
Yeah, he's the better fit. It's just they're going to have a lot more competition. For
exactly. So that's why the first round pick is going to be and it's probably not just it could very well be that a player and something else that could be involved.
Yeah, I think that. But I think of all the teams that can offer him something. When I was talking to somebody in Nashville today, they said that when you look at the teams that are interested, Boston's interested, Pittsburgh's interested. All the teams that can offer something, Patrick is probably one of the most interesting things that they could get coming back in that situation. Because
but I mean, look, Boston would offer you Anders Bork, who you could throw right in the lineup too, is tremendous.
Right.
Boston's got pieces,
and one of the young defensemen, and Vakanainen or Larkin or something.
Boston's got some pieces still. Don't worry.
Well, if you think of it, because in the West, I think LA. I don't know if I haven't heard any rumors of them interested.
I don't think they'd be interested, Mike, because then they're going to have to sign him to a new contract,
right?
And I don't think that's something they're willing to do yet.
But Winnipeg probably would. They may be an Ekholm away from I think they're a great team anyway. I don't know if they can get through the Canadian division, but I think they're really really good and really deep, especially after the Dubois deal. But if they add Ekholm, where I think they're soft on defense, I think that makes them even better.
But he's only got 1 year left, right?
Right.
So Winnipeg, they run the same risk now. If Winnipeg gets him that now we have to worry about signing him. They may not do that.
Yeah. Kevin, people in the chat are asking this. We talked about the Red Wings last week as a seller, and I know we mentioned Glenn Denning and Ryan, a few other players. I don't know I don't think that Tyler Bertuzzi, and I know he's hurt right now, so I don't know how seriously Tyler Bertuzzi is hurt, but he is an RFA at the end of the year. Have you heard anything about Bertuzzi or Mantha or any of the guys who are under contract?
No, I mean, there's been a lot of rumbling about Mantha, but I think it has everything to do with the fact that he's really played poorly, really inconsistent, and he's fallen out of favor with Blashill. But I just can't imagine, and you look at Steve Yzerman's history, and you know what I always say about Yzerman, any rumor you hear about that is total nonsense because I didn't talk to no one about anything.
Right.
And but I think it is clear that the latest that I've been hearing, and not much comes out, as I told you, is Bernier is getting a lot of attention. He's played well for them. And so he's kind of joined the list. But Bobby Ryan, Bernier, for sure, Stahl, and maybe Glendening, even though Yzerman likes him.
I can see if they got the right thing. Glendening, a lot of teams would want him. I talked about him yesterday.
Yeah, he by far would be the most sought after piece, just because he's at 67% on faceoffs this year. Like, he's been incredible. And he has scored a few goals. He plays hard every time, but that's why Yzerman likes him. So, I think if Glendenny can convince Yzerman that they'll come back, and as a sign as a free agent, they'd probably move him, because I think the bidding could be so high they could get something for him. Like, I don't think there's going to be a third round pick.
Yeah, no, at least a second and a prospect.
Yeah, I think it's
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking a second and a prospect. So even though I thought in the beginning, because people told me, there's no way Yzerman will trade him. I think it's possible, and I also think Bobby Ryan's going to go just because he's $1 million.
Right.
He's going to go for sure. I would do that.
Now, in the most shocking bit of news this morning, we hear that Brent Seabrook it will not play any longer, which is something, based on the fact that he had 3 surgeries at the end of last year. I mean, I understand the want of a player. He doesn't want to quit. He wants.
We do have an update. Hold on, Mike. They're just saying mild groin strain day to day for Shesterkin, and that looked a lot worse.
I'm shocked. He went down like he tore.
I know.
So now on the air, are you going to apologize to Kevin Weeks for his not turning it into
I'm not. Kevin Weeks follows me, and I'm not going to apologize because he thought it was a need too. So whatever, but that's fine.
Having had groin pulls as a goalie, I can say there's nothing mild about them.
That's true.
But then they're hard to get back from. Even if nothing shows up on an MRI, it's really hard. I mean, it's a really tough thing to get back from as a goalie, because that's a big that's a big thing in your how you move your legs and spread your legs and stuff like that. That's a big aspect.
I'm not touching your groin, Eck.
The comments. I don't even want to look at the comments now after that one.
No, I don't want to either.
Back to the segue back to Brent Seabrook.
Oh man.
So he had 3.
Nope.
He had 3 surgeries. What?
Sorry, nope. I'm just saying no.
Oh, okay.
No, stop it.
He had 3 surgeries in the off season. He tried to come back. He couldn't come back. And obviously, with I think 3 years left in his contract, he's not going to officially retire. But Kevin, today he said he's not coming back, and this was a foregone conclusion in my mind.
Yeah, I really feel bad about this. He's taken a lot of abuse because of his contract, and it's never. I always say this, and it's unpopular to say, but it's never the athlete's fault. It's not anybody's job to curtail your earning potential. As long as someone's willing to pay you to perform at whatever job you do, it's not your job to say, oh no, that's too much. Don't do that. No, I don't need that. This is America. This is the capital of the world. So you get whatever you can get. The only reason that I'm not earning, millions of dollars is nobody will give it to me. So you can't blame Seabrook that, he got this contract. And the reason he got this contract is historically, he's always played better, even in the playoffs. Like, he was pretty good in the regular season, but he's always exceptional in the postseason. And, they gave him this contract, but, he's a big bodied player. And for whatever reason, his body sort of betrayed him, and his skills departed, and he hasn't been able to play at the level. And now this salary has become an anchor, to say the least. But I'm going to remember Seabrook as a pretty valuable player and a key part of their.
Oh yeah, he was a horse. He took loser minutes. He was physical. He would get you points. I remember a year and a little bit into it, people were calling Seabrook a bust because they were like, well, he's not scoring, he's not doing this, he's not doing that. And then it all clicked. And then he was a major catalyst.
They called Duncan Keith a bust for years, too.
Listen, at the end of the day, when I think of the Chicago Blackhawks dynasty, and we're going to call it that, I think they were pretty close to it.
Yeah, they were
he was the pillar. To me, he was one of the pillars of that blue line. When I think of like the Oilers and Paul Coffey and Kevin Lowe, I think of when the Blackhawks, I think of Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't it Seabrook, Kevin, that went into the penalty box when Jonathan Taves was losing his mind? I think it was against Detroit in the playoffs, and he went in and he basically said, don't give up or something like that, sort of. And they were down 3-1 in that series, and they came back to win it in 7 games.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was him. I remember what you're talking about, but he was a leader on that team. I always liked him. I do remember kind of a funny story during the outdoor game, and I was covering it was in Washington, right? Blackhawks, yeah.
Yes.
And I was there with a collection of writers, and it was very unusual. But there was probably 6 or 7 of us talking to Seabrook, and I just kind of joined the group late. And I didn't recognize any of the other writers, which didn't happen very often. And they were asking him questions, and I thought Seabrook was unusually unhelpful. And he was just throwing out. They were asking questions, and he'd say, "Well, we're gonna have to wait and see." Those are the answers. And I came in and I asked a question, and he looked at me, and I wasn't sure that he knew who I was, but he recognized me as somebody who had been around for a while. So I asked my question. He gave me a very intelligent, lengthy answer that, everybody took down because they were going to use it. And I thought, I really liked this guy. He didn't probably recognize who I am, but he said, I don't recognize any of these other people. And at least this guy belongs here. So
he belongs there.
The big question, though, after this happened was, what's up with Jonathan Taves? Are we going to go a whole season and not have any idea what's going on with him?
Well, you know what? I think that Jonathan Taves has earned the right to keep this to himself until he's ready to talk about it. That's what I have to say.
That's.
I don't know what it is. I speculate, but this is. Obviously, I think they were being truthful when they said that they were still trying to figure it out, what was going on.
Now, Russ, one of the other things out of that Ranger game yesterday, and we both watched it, we may be seeing the coming of age of Alexis Lafreniere, because he, over the last few games, he started to become acclimated to the NHL, and then last night, late third period, that snipe he picked top corner was, first overall pick quality.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, and a couple games before that, he had a backhand that he tried to put in the upper far corner, close corner, rather short side, and he almost did. He missed it by like that much. It hit the iron. So he had been getting closer. It really, ever since the game in Philly when he wasn't used in overtime, Quinn started to use him with good players once Panarin was out. Now the big question, and in this one, he wasn't playing with the best players. But I think now it's not mattering as much because those games when he did play with the top players definitely helped him confidence-wise. You saw that snipe. But there's also other things he's been doing for weeks that I noted in the Philly game, like he's playing good away from the puck. He's playing well when the camera's not actually showing him along the wall. And, when you're watching on TV, I can't stress this enough, you are still missing action. You are. And there's things that we see when we're there, and you do too as a fan when you're there, that you just don't see. And so I think he's been playing really well for 2 weeks, and now the points are starting to come. And I don't think he's going to be anything like a point a game or anything this year. But I do think, for people that were trying to say, oh, what's going on here, just calm down.
We don't see many players of his quality come into a situation like he came into, and when you come into a situation where you're not, not necessarily the top guy, when we've seen the other guys of McDavid or Crosby, they immediately were kind of handed the team, to a degree. And those guys are used to being handed the team. Like Lafreniere is used to it being his team, no matter what. Now he's in the NHL, he's on the third line. It's just a different situation. And I think that learning how to play that way, it does take the pressure off him in one hand, but in the other hand, it also has to be a little bit of a strange situation for him mentally, to figure out exactly. Yeah. And what I saw last night was him starting to understand that he's good enough to be there. Once players like him understand they're good enough to be there, they're very dangerous, because that's when they start doing the things that they can do, the things that separate them. And that, right now, he's finally doing that, you know.
And I do want to again say to the guy who was on the air on Sirius XM when I held up this sign, guy was talking to Mick Kern. He goes, I would trade Chris Kreider's contract. Now they were basically having a segment where if you could trade anybody's contract, trade it.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, I would trade it. And I was holding up this sign that said dope. And the producer outed me and said, hey, Russ just called him a dope. Let's talk about it when we come to the other side. So we did. And since then, Kreider has had like 6 goals. Actually more.
Yeah, he's got 2 hat tricks.
He's had 2 hat tricks since then. So anybody who was worried about Chris Kreider, and I'm sure there were other Ranger fans too, at the end of the day, this isn't the greatest team, but Chris Kreider will get his 20 to 25 goals every year. Don't worry about it. And when the team starts getting better, he'll get more points.
So in our daily Buffalo Sabres update, just briefly here. The Sabres in losing to the Islanders allowed 45 shots. It was 45 to 18. Ralph Kruger held a media availability this morning and basically corrected a Buffalo reporter who said it was 15 shots. He said, no, it was 18. Like, there's a big difference between 15 and 18.
I got a text last night that a coach fired. There's at 1:15 a.m. I got a coach. There's going to be a coach fired, and I get this text, and I'm asleep. I'm asleep, and I just see it up, and I immediately think to myself, okay, it's Kruger.
Well,
like, that's the first thing that came to my head. Like that's what came to my head. Like
let's further that speculation, Act, because Kevin Adams, the Sabres general manager, accompanied the team. I think they're on Long Island right now, and he is holding a media availability at 4:30. Which, normally if the GM is going to do something, it's like around the same time that the coach and the players are held their media availability. This one is sort of separate, so speculation is already starting to run rampant.
Well, we got a couple things real quick we want to get to, and then which one thing I wanted to do, and that is I got sent this jersey by the guys up at the University of Alaska Anchorage. And I don't know if you know what's going on up there, but it's really interesting. They're the college hockey program and the college gymnastics program. Basically, the people of Alaska, the board in Alaska that handles the money, said that they're done unless they can raise a certain amount of money, right? And they had to raise $3 million by last week. The Seattle Kraken stepped up and said when they had gotten to about $1.5 million, the Kraken said, we'll help, and basically put in another $150,000 challenge on it or whatever. And then the board said, all right, we'll give you till the end of August to raise the money. So now they still have a chance to save this franchise. And we have a lot of Hockey Buzz fans up there too. They sent me this shirt and they're like, if you can mention it. And I think it's really, it's one of these great programs. It's like classic Alaska. It's classic in that community. It's huge. They've got a beautiful building. And it's just one of those places that for a while in the 90s, they had a really good college program that went to like the NCAA. They beat Boston College.
They had some good players.
Yeah, I mean the best players that I was looking at. I was looking at the NHLers that have come out of there. Probably the most famous would be like Curtis Glencross. Came out of there.
Coming out of that school.
Out of that school. Right. The NHLers right now. Jay Beagle, was in the NHL. From there, and then you also have like Mike Paluzzo, who came out of there.
Paluzzo, yeah.
So there's just some really, really cool, and it's like they're desperately trying to keep this program alive. Basically, the money will help them survive for a couple of years. And I think they're going to make it, but it's really touch and go, and it's the kind of thing that the community up there is so all the kids up there. That's their pro hockey team. Like that's it. So this is a really big deal. I think what the Kraken did was amazing. The Kraken come out and they say, we're going to help them. That this is actually part of our region. They consider Alaska their region because they get to broadcast. I guess the NHL works this out where the Kraken get to broadcast into Montana, North Dakota, and Alaska. They consider that this is going to be something, in Idaho maybe or something like that. I don't know. So they really want to, and Lewicki, who's been up to Alaska several times and has been to the arena to see games there. Actually, really just fell in love with it too. So he's as the president of the Kraken. So they need to get there. Scott Gomez was born there. They need to get Scott Gomez to help fundraise. Well, the thing is, and what they say is, that they really what's killing him right now is because they're losing a lot. There's a lot of great players coming out of there now that are not they're not staying in Alaska because the program's in jeopardy. They don't know what's going to be there. So that's hurting them quite a bit right now. They have one of the coolest logos in all of hockey. I mean, I think that's like a really cool.
Yeah, that's a cool logo.
I think it's a really cool jersey in general. And the Save Our Sea, so it's SaveSeawolfHockey.com. Hockey Buzz already put money into it. We're gonna, and if you guys can help with all, that would be great. Just let's try to keep it going because it's one of those cool old school type franchises.
Yeah, actually, Parayko is probably the best player out of Alaska Fairbanks. Now it's a little. I think
That's a different college, though.
Different college, but maybe they could get him the help too because he's close to
Yeah,
there.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of the players who played up there are who are the big stars up there. Like their biggest. I mean, they've had other guys too. But their biggest stars up there, are.
Well, I mean, Gomez is from Alaska. Former Philadelphia Flyer Matt Carl.
Yeah. I mean, Rob Kahn. You remember him at all from Chicago and Buffalo?
Yeah, I still think Parayko's a bigger name.
But these are guys that actually went to the school. I'm saying.
Joey Crab.
These are guys that actually played.
Yeah, the other school. Yes.
For University of Anchorage. For University of Alaska Anchorage. Those are the big guys out of there, and Dave Westcott. Dave Westcott, remember him? Or Doobie Westcott. Sorry,
Doobie Westcott. I remember. Yes.
Another one. So these are guys who play for University of Alaska Anchorage. For the Seawolves. So seawolfhockey.com. All right, let's move on. Save seawolfhockey.com. You get a chance to really do it would be good to do. Anyway, let's talk about the big story today, which is Walter Gretzky. Mm-hmm. And this to me is it's just one of those. It's just really sad. Kevin, did you ever get a chance to interview him?
Oh yeah, a couple or 3 times. The first time in the 1980s. And the funny thing about it wasn't to do with him raising the greatest hockey player in the game. It was about the fact that he was bringing in his youngest son to the Silver Stick tournament in Port Huron, Michigan. And so I ended up talking with him and his wife about all that. It was a terrific interview. But what I would say about Walter is, the hardest thing for any parent is to walk the line between being too tough and inspiring your kid and pushing them to be all they could be. It's a very, very tricky business to do that. Obviously Walter mastered that. The love that Wayne had and his other boys had for Walter was unwavering. And yet I think it's fair to say that he pushed them incredibly hard to be all they can be. And I think it's a great testimony to both Walter and his wife, who also passed away before he did. So go ahead.
It's a testament to his reputation that during the TSN broadcast of the Leafs in Vancouver, that they basically scrapped the intermission to talk about Walter Gretzky, that Gord Miller went on about, related a couple stories about him. Obviously he's from Brantford, and he was a fixture in the Toronto area because Brantford's relatively close. And, of course you didn't know that much about him. He was a rabid Toronto Maple Leafs fan. But his, obviously he rooted for his son.
And his son never played.
He came close. He came very close. If it wasn't that year, I think it was 1995. 95 or 96 at the end of the Gilmore thing, Gilmore Anderchuk era with the Leafs. Gretzky was a free agent after he played with St. Louis before he signed with the Rangers, and the Leafs were in on it. But at that point, Steve Stavro, the owner of the Leafs, was basically, having some budgetary issues, and they couldn't offer Gretzky the amount of money that he ended up getting from the Rangers. But he wanted to play for the Leafs because his dad was a Leafs fan. But
the Rangers did one thing back then, which was, I think, kind of unheard of. They gave him a signing bonus. They gave him I think $2 million. Right. Just to sign.
Right, which was at that point. Now, my favorite, Walter thing was there was a series that came out in Canada that I wish that would be released on DVD or somewhere that we can stream it now, called you remember Ken Dryden had a book called The Game. The series called The Game that came on CBC. It was like a 10-part series that was on Sunday nights. And we had the Canadian satellite dish back then, so we were picking it up. And it was an incredible series, and one of them focused on Walter Gretzky. One of the episodes, and it was and the whole, my favorite thing still to this day, and I've actually used this for for teams I've coached, girls soccer teams I've coached even, is what Walter had Wayne do back then, which was he had a piece of paper, draw a hockey rink on it, and Wayne's job for that the entire game as a kid would be to sit and put his finger wherever the puck was as the game went on, and just follow the puck around not look down, but not just look at the puck. Look on the TV. Follow the puck wherever it is. If it's here, if it's there, it goes around the boards. It goes up there, back forward. And he Wayne credited that with his the Gretzky thing of being where the puck was going to go to.
Right.
He had done that so many times that he had this habit in his head of knowing what would happen.
He knew where the puck was going to be before everybody else.
Going here before somewhere else. And I love that story. I thought that was the coolest thing to hear. And
the only thing I could say is I'd seen him at a few events as far as Walter goes, but I have a friend that lives in Brantford, and I've stayed over his house 3 or 4 times. And, of course, Wayne Gretzky Highway, I have to take that to get to his house. And when we've talked about him, it seems like everybody in that city has been to that house in that basement to see the memorabilia. Like that, it just seems like Walter invited everybody in, whatever kid wanted to come in and see his stuff, he basically showed it to him.
Well, the greatest story about that, right? Which is Kevin, you probably know this better than I do, but the concept of when he brought the Russians down there during the 80s.
They talked about that last night.
That was just, they were talking about that. That's just an amazing thing. Thinking about, because remembering back then to the 87 time and what it was like to invite the Russians over to your house, that seemed like an unbelievably impossible thing to do. Yeah. At that point in 87, that was just.
Well, Dave Poulin talked about it because he was in the house when, again, it was right. Makarov, Fetisov, and maybe Larionov. Yeah. And Poulin was standing at the top of the stairs, basically preventing Tikhonov and a guy who supposedly was a press guy, but it probably was KGB, right, allowing them to go downstairs because Walter Gretzky was showing Wayne's awards.
Yeah, it's like memorabilia, all that stuff. Yeah.
I think that is just that's a crazy story. There's a great Paul Stewart has some great. I put his article up instead of mine today because Paul Stewart had some really great things. He's done different things with Walter over the years, and there's some really great stories up there. Paul's a great storyteller, so definitely read that.
I mean, if you were ever at an event with Wayne Gretzky, you could pretty much look around, and Walter was probably there.
And I think one of the best things that if I'm Walter, one of the things if I'm a dad, and I'm a dad of sports kids and like that. I think the greatest thing you could say if you're Walter, when you're leaving this world, is to look at honestly how Wayne Gretzky has become as an ambassador for hockey. Mm-hmm. I think Wayne has just absolutely done a phenomenal job at it. When I see him talk, he's Wayne Gretzky. He's still the greatest guy in the world. He does not come off that way when he talks now.
No, but I think the reason Wayne Gretzky did such a good job is because Gordie Howe showed him how you do a good job with that, and it carried on to Wayne Gretzky. If that didn't happen, if they never met and became friends,
but Walter always carried himself so humbly too. That's why I thought it was kind of a neat thing. He kind of does remind me of his watch. I mean, I never met Walter Gretzky, but seeing pictures of Wayne now when Wayne talks does remind you a little bit of Walter Gretzky.
But Kevin, everybody forgets that Wayne and the NHL were on the outs for years because of the Phoenix situation, and he wasn't that ambassador that he is now.
It was all money.
It was all right, and I don't blame him because of the cluster F that the Arizona Coyotes are. But thank God they got him back in. And I can overlook the personal pain that he inflicted on me in 1993.
Oh, that's so big of you, Mike.
1993 has been brought up again. Drink. Everyone drink.
Yeah. What I would say is I agree with what Eklund said about Ambassador, but I would take it further. I just think is testimony to what a great person Wayne is. Because for as great as he is, he could have been an ivory tower type of guy, and Wayne has never been that. And I think Walter kept him grounded, through it all. And he reminded them all the time. Wayne would do press conferences, and I remember specifically Wayne talking about this. They would ask him in the early 80s when every city that he would go to, he'd have to do a formal press conference, whether he'd get weary of it. And he said, "Oh, absolutely. But my dad always told me is that the game is going to give you so much, and you got to give it back." I know the story of Gordie, and I know their friendship, and I'm sure Gordie told him the same thing. But Walter was beating that drum into him when he was a young man.
The best way of realizing that Gretzky is pretty much this average guy with unbelievable hockey skills, and he's a rich guy, but you don't know it is. I don't know which tournament it was, maybe the Masters or something, Kev, but it was basically being played through his backyard, and he was sitting out there watching, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, there's Wayne Gretzky. He's
sitting on his porch.
It's like, it's his house."
He backs up. He backs up to the golf course.
Yeah.
I never had a chance to interview Wayne. I've never talked to Wayne. The closest I've ever had to talk. I'm not. I've never been in a situation where I could talk to him. Just I met
It's
Gordy.
hard. No, it's not easy.
I got to talk to Gordy Al. That was cool, but I never got to talk to Wayne. And
he's a regular guy. Like, it's unbelievable.
I'm sure the only closest I ever came was a funny story of Mario Lemieux calling me during the lockout one time. That was Al Morgani gave Mario Lemieux my number, which is like crazy. He called me up during the lockout, and Mario was golfing with Wayne at the time.
Yeah.
And that's the closest I ever came to being on the phone with Wayne Gretzky. It's a pretty funny story.
Well, I know Wayne walked by me at the Centennial Classic when they had that the top 100. And the funny thing is, you're in a room with. That's probably my favorite picture, Russ. Glenn Hall, Johnny Busey.
Oh, it's a great picture.
Dave Keon, Red Kelly, Johnny Bauer, and Gretzky, all in the same frame.
Yeah, I mean, the funny thing about Gretzky is, like, I interviewed him for a short time at the Heritage Classic, but I've told people I waited for Al Strachan to fire off like 10 questions before I would even ask one, just because I felt like I had to wait my turn. So I did, and Gretzky answered it like I was a long-time guy, and I was literally 2 years on the job. So that was nice. But then years later, Upper Deck invited me to an event at the Hockey Hall of Fame. You got a picture of Gretzky, an autograph. Stanley Cup was there. Kelly Chase was doing the ceremony. But afterwards, is when the picture stuff happened. And it was really nice because for the second I got to talk to Gretzky, I mentioned my 100 Ranger Greats book. And he remembered the book because he had asked for it through his agent. He goes, "Oh, that was you." And it was really nice. Like, he doesn't have to do that. He's Wayne Gretzky.
Right. I'm remembering that. I know.
You could have just taken the picture and been like, "Hey, nice to meet you. See ya."
Well, I've got two Wayne Gretzky stories.
Yeah.
Number one, Wayne returned one of my phone calls at my house, and my daughter Erin was 10 or 11, and she picked it up, and I heard her talking on the phone, and she's carrying on and talking to him about her day and everything else. And all of a sudden, I said, "Who is that?" And he goes, "It's Mr. Gretzky for you, Dad." I got Wayne on the phone, and I said, "I'm sorry about that." He goes, "Oh no." He goes, "It was fun listening to her talk about her day." But the other story is a better one. I got called, and I can't remember. It's terrible, but I can't remember which airline magazine called me at some point in the 1990s and offered me $1,500 to write a profile on Wayne Gretzky for an airline magazine.
Oh, wow.
And so I left a message for Wayne, and I said, $1,500 probably isn't much in your world. Huge in my world. Right? If all I got to do is to get you to the phone and get you to talk for 15 minutes, and I can make $1,500. And about 10 minutes later, the phone rings, and he goes, "That's the best sales pitch I have ever." But that's the kind of guy I was.
Yeah, right.
Like, he didn't have to do that.
Yeah.
How many millions of profiles have been written?
Oh my gosh! How many times has he answered? Every question you asked him in that interview, he answered 100,000 times before.
He signs autographs for everybody. I've never seen him turn anybody down. I've seen him stop wherever he was, whatever he was doing, and just start signing autographs for people. It's crazy.
I've seen that too. Yeah, I've been in rooms.
Definitely is the one that's
and I'm going to say this too. This is going to sound weird, but I think some of Wayne's aura has rubbed off on Dustin Johnson, his son-in-law.
Yeah, I think that's true, actually.
Because, he was not a very popular player.
No.
And now I sense that that's turning. And some of it is that, they often say, and married to Wayne Gretzky's.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know what it is, and I'm not the biggest of golf fans, but I do know this. It was sort of the aura of unfinished potential with Dustin Johnson. That he had all the physical tools, he just couldn't put the mental thing into his game. And over the last few years, he has. But maybe that learning from his father-in-law is part of it.
Yeah, I'll tell you what did it for me.
But that's a good point, Mike, because I didn't mean to imply that Johnson himself hasn't done it by, as you said, bringing his game together. I mean, he's done that on his own. But what I'm saying is that, sometimes people win and we still don't like them.
Right.
And I think in his case, he's won. And because he's now associated with Wayne, we tend to like him better.
Well, I think what also helped him, and because I've heard this in an interview, is like Gretzky is legitimately is impressed with the way he is as an athlete, and if Wayne Gretzky is impressed with the way you are as an athlete, then you are something, and I think that does help his whole case.
Crazy.
When you think about Gretzky, that and obviously, but I want to know a little bit about Kevin, since you're the only one who's really talked to Walter and Wayne. Did you see the similarities in them, or do you see more of the similarities in them now as Wayne gets older, even? Or
well, they're both polite guys. They're completely different. I mean, but I think the humble, cordial approach and soft spoken. Wayne, when he speaks. Is very kind of soft spoken. He speaks with authority, but he's quiet. He's not a booming voice.
It's very Canadian. Canadians really embrace that sort of.
Well, it really is. That is the epitome of a hockey dad in some ways, the way he was. Like you said, I've been pushing him, but then also the other thing, and anybody who's ever had a backyard rink and tried to keep it going knows this, as I do.
Maybe the previous generation of hockey dad acting. The thing is, the hockey dads nowadays, they've taken on a completely different situation. So I mean,
there are other times, but whenever I've been out in the middle of the night at 2 a.m, I remember from reading Wayne Gretzky's book years ago. Whenever I'm out at 2 a.m, putting water on the rink, I'm thinking to myself, "Yep, this is what you do. This is what you do when you're getting
the 60s all next week. The rink is dead."
Oh, I know. This is the last weekend for it. It's going to be 65 degrees.
Kev, I want to ask you this before we end the show, because I had a mild hissy fit yesterday when talking about the Alex Ovechkin cup check on Trent Frederick, and then we saw Brett Pesce with the slew foot. I think it was on Robbie Fabry, and both of them ended up in $5,000 fines. Something is wrong with the Department of Player Safety when both of those incidents end up in fines instead of suspensions.
I'm with you, and when I thought of you when I saw the Ovechkin thing, because you've long said that he gets special treatment, and I never really bought into that, but I do in that case. That was a suspendable act. You could not have been more flagrant.
Yeah,
right. Ken, do you remember? You may remember this. I didn't, because I wasn't born yet, but about 60, 61, 62, something like that. Andy Bathgate wrote an op-ed in the New York Times about spearing in the NHL.
Yeah, I know that he did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and the fact that it is going unnoticed right now, and it's just
right.
No. My biggest problem was I can't believe they didn't call a penalty in the game. It's just, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
I don't know. I mean, I was watching. They showed that on the Detroit game when I was watching, and Mickey Redmond, the analyst, said he didn't think it was worthy of a suspension. That's old school.
That is old
school. But I really did. That was the first time I had seen it, and I said, "Wow, that."
Yeah.
The fact that was a fine and not a suspension is really hard to justify.
The only person besides Mickey Redmond who doesn't think that he should have been suspended is Chris Simon, who took a baseball swing at Ryan Holwig's
head. No, but I want to say something. I mean, besides the Flyers' great comeback yesterday, in that game, it was dirty to the point where I think the league has to worry about this next Penguins-Flyers game, because there was headhunting on both sides. At first, the Flyers were headhunting Mark Friedman, and then the Penguins headhunted Phil Myers. And Myers is out for next game, and Friedman and Myers didn't finish that game. They both were not in the.
I was really surprised that Patrick wasn't suspended for that hit on Friedman.
Right, which was
that to me was that was a really dirty hit.
Pushed him into the boards. He was 10 feet away,
and it's a guy that it's just such a jerk move by Patrick. And it's just Patrick's frustration at that time, but and he's been playing better, or he's been more engaged, like you said. But you got to know when to turn it off. My gosh, a player you played with a week ago.
But Russ,
boards, and you're going to slam him into the boards like that?
But Russ is bringing up a good point. It's we've gotten to a point where 20, 25 games into the regular season, and these teams have played each other a few more times than they normally play each other, and we know that they get pissed off at each other.
Yeah.
And
And the NHL's they want that to happen. That's what they're doing. That's the whole point.
Well, that's clear because they're not calling enough penalties to.
No, but they put the schedule together for that specific reason. This schedule is for that reason. So
no, but the schedule is one thing, but the fact that guys are basically dropping like flies in this series is another. And the next game is going to be a big deal. And I hope the league is ready for that because.
Does anybody else, we got to go, but does anybody else feel like the 2 games against the team is okay? We can deal with that in the future, but 3 games is just way too many. Like it feels like
too many. No, I don't.
No, I like the 3-game series.
You do? Okay,
I do. Before we go, I got to do a shameless plug.
Please.
I ended up, you know how it goes. It's and Russ can attest to this. It's feast or famine in the book world, and I now have 3 book contracts. Where 3 weeks ago I had none.
Yeah.
And they're all due in various times. But one of them, I'm being brought in to help. I'm like Mariano Rivera. I'm closing on
right.
Nice.
And it's on Bernie Nichols.
Oh,
and
nice.
I've spent the last 2 days. I've talked to Bernie for over 3 hours, and it's been one of the most entertaining 3 hours I've had in a long time.
He's an interesting guy. I've chatted with him more than a few times.
Yeah, I had 2, but you know, to have 3 straight hours and to reminisce about the pink suits, the top hats with tennis shoes, the blue Corvette, the pumpernickel goal salute, the 70 goals, and his explanation. And I'm not going to tell you what he had to say about it because you'll have to read about it. But
the point seasons he had were crazy for a while.
And he talked about the year and a half that he played with Gretzky, and I don't know that anybody could have explained what that was like better than he did to me today. And I learned more about beaver trapping and eating muskrats. And moose, shooting moose and having moose fries. We covered the whole gamut.
We really covered everything.
The dichotomy of that kind of a guy ending up in Los Angeles is just crazy.
That is the entire crux of the book. I'm writing the beginning of the book, and I'm setting that up. That a guy,
like Crocodile Dundee.
He is from a town of 75 people. Okay? And he went to Los Angeles. He had never been to the U.S. He had never been to a city larger than Bathgate, Ontario. Wow. So it's a really good story, and he's a really fun guy.
Can't wait. That's going to be amazing. Oh, my gosh. That's so cool. Very, very cool.
And he has there's going to be some tragedy in that book, too.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody, for watching the show this week and hanging out with us this week. We'll be back again on Monday. Have a good weekend with all the games. Remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.